We will start off with our first bill, which is Representative Nelson on House File 1302, funding to provide and establish a meat and poultry processing certification navigator. If you can please move your bill, Representative Nelson.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to move the 1302, and I believe that will be laid over for possible inclusion in the further omnibus bill.
All right, thank you. Representative Nelson moves the House File 1302 be laid over for possible inclusion. I see that we have a DE1 amendment. Do you want to move your amendment, Representative Nelson?
Yes, I would like to, thank you, Madam Chair, I would like to move the DE1. And this amendment reflects that there's a USDA match. So this portion of the bill, it's about half of the funding for the position is coming from the USDA. So the dollar amounts are roughly half of what was in the original language. And so I'd move that amendment.
All right, discussion to the DE1. Hearing none, all those in favor of the DE1 amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, the motion prevails. The amendment DE1 is adopted. Now the bill's in the shape that you want. Representative Nelson, to your bill.
Yes, thank you. What the idea of this bill is, the challenges of meat processing and inspection and everything that happens with there, making sure the permits and the compliance and everything is taking place as need to be, can be an overwhelming and daunting task. And for somebody that's coming in, or maybe they're starting a new business model or transitioning, really having somebody to help them through the process, making sure that the proper permits and inspections and safety plans are all in place are crucially important, because one missed plan and or one misstep really creates that starting over from the beginning sometimes, and we want to make sure that this process is walked through correctly and carefully, and can help not be a burden to new businesses starting out or transitioning. So with that, I do believe I have a few testifiers. If they would like to testify on this. And
all right, our first one is Greg Wierschke from King Chickens and Company. If you can please, and then the next one we have is Lise Walker from Walker Farms. Oh, she's not here, okay. And then Paul Sabonsky. All right, and then we have Sarah Goldman. All right, if you can please make your way to testifying table. Greg, if you can please identify yourself before the committee and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Greg Wierschke. I'm with Clean Chickens and Company. We're a mobile USDA poultry processor out of Elk River. We serve most of the state. My story is we started 4 years ago with the USDA planning to be able to process. One of my problems when I was building my plant was to get a HACCP plan or get some assistance with a HACCP plan and SSOP. We called through the whole state of Minnesota, and we eventually got our help from the state of Wisconsin with their University of Wisconsin. This is needed in the state of Minnesota. I've been to a lot of different plants. There's some language barriers, and with those barriers come barriers to HACCP plans. Starting new, it's very scary. If we had a coach or a consultant that would help out with those plans, would make that transition from a custom meat shop to an inspected meat shop relatively easier, and we would have more value added with the meat that we sell in the state, which would help our economy as a whole for the farmers and retailers.
All right, thank you. And then we have Paul over on Zoom. If you could please identify yourself before the committee.
Yeah, that'll be
Thank you, Chairman Vang. Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today on behalf of House File 1302 by Representative Nelson to establish a meat poultry processing certification navigator position at MDA. I am a lifelong livestock farmer. I'm from Mobasso, Minnesota, southwestern Minnesota. I have both cattle and hogs on my farm. I currently also raise hogs for Nyman Ranch, which is a specialty market. Plus, I also do direct marketing of both hogs and cattle through local lockers, where the return is much higher for those individual sales that I do. COVID put a lot of pressure on small lockers due to the shutdown of large processing plants. Because local lockers are so vital to our remaining independent livestock farmers, I and several partners helped start a bottleneck project to support these businesses. This is the project I'm talking about. It's one of the handouts that's available to committee members. This project is our fiscal sponsor for this project was Minnesota Farmers Union. It was also an initiative of the Regional Partnership of the University of Minnesota, RSDP, and also a number of other organizations also support from MDA. In your packet, as I mentioned, you'll see there's an executive summary on page 4 that gives the full depth of our report. That report was a result of doing over 50 interviews with independent processors, basically to hear from them what were some of the things that would be helpful in terms of their businesses. And particularly our report was looking at how do we transition, how do we have more local lockers rather than closing. And one of the key recommendations that you find on page 4 of that report is support for this navigator position at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture to assist processors in this process, particularly when people are trying to take over a locker or enter into the business. That's where they need some help, and that position we believe would be a vital function. It's one of our, among our many recommendations, but one of our key recommendations. In closing, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Also want to say we also support House File 1303, which is coming next on your docket. And thank you so much for making this opportunity to do this for my farm today.
Thank you, Paul. Our next testifier is Sarah Goldman. If you can identify yourself before the committee.
Chair Ving and members of the committee, my name is Sarah Goldman, and I'm a policy organizer with the Land Stewardship Project. The Land Stewardship Project works on behalf of over 1,000 farmer members across the state, many of whom reside in greater Minnesota. Over the past 2 years, as our staff has spoken with new and beginning meat processors and small to mid-sized livestock farmers, it's really become abundantly clear that there are significant challenges for small meat processors who are trying to get off the ground, update or expand their facilities, and many of our livestock producers who rely on those processors as well. So 2 bills before you today, HF 1302, which creates a meat processing liaison position within the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and HF 1303, which establishes meat processor training grants, provide important resources to alleviate these challenges. The new meat processing liaison position will provide needed support to processors, especially those processors just getting up and running. MDA is the subject matter expert on inspection regulation and deals with inspection questions on a day-to-day basis. So they're very well equipped to answer questions and help folks navigate this process. In addition, this position will leverage federal resources through a one-to-one federal funding match. I wanted to mention that this proposal has widespread support. You'll see a number of letters of support in your packets. This proposal was included in the governor's budget, and many organizations, including the Minnesota Farmers Union, the Minnesota Farm Bureau, Minnesota Association of Meat Processors, Regenerative Agriculture Alliance, and Latino Economic Development Center have all submitted letters of support for this proposal. I did want to also talk about HF 1303 ahead of the introduction of this next bill. So this provides training grants to processors, and it's also an important bill because it provides resources so that processors have the skills that they need to update, to expand, to transfer or transition their processing facilities. Meat and poultry processors under federal or state inspection need to have sanitation standard operating procedures, or SSOPs, and hazard analysis and critical control point, or HACCP plans. They need to have these in place, and developing procedures and plans can be difficult, and often producers have many questions. These grants would provide needed financial support so that processors have the resources to develop these plans in addition to support for business plan development. This proposal also has widespread support from a number of organizations, including the Minnesota Farmers Union, the Minnesota Farm Bureau, Minnesota Association of Meat Processors, Regenerative Agriculture Alliance, and the Latino Economic Development Center. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. So those are all the testifiers I have in my notes. Are there any public testifiers that would like to testify? Or anyone that I'm missing? Okay. Seeing none, discussion to the bill. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Nelson. Just wondering on liaison and working with folks, the ability to have multiple languages, is that something that you foresee? I'm just thinking of, you're familiar with Longchen and South St. Paul and some of the opportunities with meat processing for various communities. Maybe just if you could give your perspective on that.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Hansen. While we don't have the language specifically in there that, they have to be available for, multiple languages, I think that is important. There are, one of the things that is quite prevalent in our small processing plants or small lockers is a variety of ethnic groups or ethnicities that are really running these. And, oftentimes English is not their first language. And I think, I don't know if somebody from the department would like to kind of answer that, what,
I see
how
Commissioner Bobble.
they kind of work through that process.
If you can identify yourself before the committee.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Hansen, for the question. Yes, this is a big part of what we're looking to do agency-wide, really, around accessibility for our programs and licensing. So certainly this would be a big part of what we're trying to do generally with meat processing and licensing, but also for this position as well. And I did just want to take the time, I apologize we did not sign up, but we were very, very supportive of House File 1302. As mentioned, it was in the governor's budget, and we really appreciate the consideration for this position.
Representative Hansen. Okay. Further questions? Seeing none. Closing remarks, Representative Nelson, and please renew your motion.
I will renew my motion that this bill be relayed over. I think in an ideal world, we wouldn't have to create this position, but at the same time, there's so much complexity with making sure that proper permits and training and the safety plans are in place. I think it also becomes a necessity. And I thank you for the consideration on this, and I would move that it be laid over.
All right. House File, Representative Nelson renews their motion that House File 1302 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion. House File 1302 as amended is laid over.